Again, we're privileged to be joined by a thought leader in the space, vastly experienced Anne Green, whose client experience is a laundry list of basically every major advertiser in the world, including J&J, Hershey, Unilever, you name it, basically. And Anne is the managing partner of the creative development function at Kantar, MillwardBrown. So what she does is to help her clients, with building out processes for creative development. And this is the bit that we really like here at the AIRB. It's about embedding research into the creative development process. So Anne Green, please join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and talk a little bit about creating extraordinary marketing in the mobile world. I don't think I need to convince this audience about the importance of mobile as a vehicle and as a marketing channel, but I think it might be useful to put some data behind this in the sense of these are the results from a recent ad reaction study that we had done. And one of the things that you see is here you see in minutes on a daily basis the number of minutes that people are spending in each of these channels. What I want you to notice is the fact that smartphone is actually now greater than TV. So in other words, in terms of taking in content, smartphone has become the #1 vehicle and is only sort of on a trajectory to grow. What's also interesting about mobile is the fact that it gets consumed throughout the day. In traditional media, we've talked a lot about Dayparts, and what's fascinating is when you look at this green line, what you see is that smartphone usage cuts throughout the day, while others are biased towards certain Dayparts. So there's a certain advantage to mobile in the sense of you can reach people at the right time, at the right moment. So one would certainly look at these two sort of sets of data and say, okay, so I've got to do mobile, it's a given. But the fact of the matter is it's not as simple as just being there. It's a matter of having to have great creative that people want to engage with, that they are receptive to. And part of the reason why that has become absolutely critical is the rise of ad blockers. This is a study that was produced by Page Fair. They do an annual study on looking at the use of blockers. And what you see here is that typically the use of ad blockers is growing most rapidly in those markets that have the greater restrictions in terms of access and bandwidth. But you will also notice that the United States is featured on this list of countries that are using ad blockers. I think the key thing to think about with this is how does this convert into media dollars? The media dollars wasted when you look at ad blockers is significant. It is in the billions. So one of the things to think about is this isn't just about creative for creative's sake. It's about creative that will truly engage viewers and save us money. So what we'll be sharing today are the results of some work that we do annually in partnership with the Bull Market. What it does is it looks at the results of both Cannes Lion winners as well as winners from the MMA Smarties. And what it's doing is it's looking for patterns in terms of the strong performance. We have two sets of data. One is for the winners, and these are basically the best performing ads that are within the mix. And then we also have the finalists, which are good, strong performing ads. So basically what you are going to be seeing is results for overall quite strong performing ads. But you'll also see some key differences in terms of how the winners did versus the finalists. So the first area, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and talk about 6 principles that we've seen apply and have surfaced in this research. And the first principle is that we found that the winners featured a component of utility. So in other words, we all know that mobile is about deepening the relationship that we have with people. But how do we go about doing that? And the first area that we was there was a certain element of utility. Now, one of the things that marketers have to think about, though, is what is the need? What is the utility that they can offer? So this isn't just as easy as I'm going to offer something that people find useful. It's got to have some purpose. It's got to have some connection in terms of what the brand stands for. Now, the first example here is for Gatorade. Gatorade in Guatemala actually produced an app that was basically an additional homework assignment for students. It was sports homework, because one of the things that they had found is that children were spending much more time not doing activities, not playing sports, not using up their energy. And so what they actually did was they created this app that encouraged kids to go outside and to play. Samsung, on the other hand, took a different approach in that it made an app that was relevant for Alzheimer's sufferers. What their app did was it actually allows them to recognize an individual who comes within their proximity, so that they understand who that person is and what their relationship with that person is. So you can see that there are two very different kinds of utility being manifested here. But what each brand did was they really took the time to understand where they had permission to go and what made sense for them. The second area to think about is one of interactivity, but interactivity in terms of two-way communication. So we find that the winners and the finalists both used some element of interactivity, and it was in many cases social in nature. But again, the key thing I want to highlight here is that it was two-way. When it comes to this kind of two-way communication, one of the things that we found is that you can create personal experiences that are either playful or they're practical. Either is fine. And Mercedes is a good example of the practical. So what Mercedes did with the launch of its GLA is it actually created the ability on Instagram to build your car from the wheels up. So in actuality, people could go into Instagram and they could create their own GLA, and then they could in turn share it. So great opportunity there in terms of the two-way interaction, and Mercedes learning as part of that process what was really important to people and what were some of the features that they were keen on. The second is for Sunsilk. This is a great example of something that's much more playful in nature. And what Sunsilk had actually done was they came up with a dictionary, and it's a dictionary of decoding what it means when you touch your hair in different ways. And so they put this in a mobile setting, but as part of doing that, they allowed people to actually create characters of themselves and share it with others on Zalo. So they took this idea of basically the decoding what it means when you do different things with your hair, and they allowed people to manifest it themselves and create their own character as an extension. This is a big one that I feel passionate about, which is this idea of co-creation. We talk about co-creation in the field of creative development overall, because one of the things that we find is happening is we live in a world where it's no longer just about pushing out our messages. It's about having and creating experiences with people. And one of the ways to do that is to co-create with them. And this is a very popular approach when it comes to millennials. Millennials want to be leaned in. They want to be part of the process. And here a great example is Horse with Harden that was done by Foot Locker. For those of you not familiar, basically what people were allowed to do is submit their own trick shots. And Harden would have to then in turn replicate that trick shot. Now, at the last time I looked at this, it was roughly 60 million views, and I'm sure it's actually much higher than that. But you can see how they use this idea of making people part of the experience. Let's see if Harden can actually replicate my trick. And then for people that weren't submitting a trick, it was just a lot of fun to watch. And so there was a big element of co-creation there that also made it a viral success. Gratification in real time. We live in a real-time world. We live in a now, now, now world. And one of the examples that I love when it comes to this gratification in real time, and I love it because it's part of a broader campaign, is the work that Heineken had done. They have the Cities of the World campaign. And what Cities of the World is all about is basically encouraging men to explore their worlds, to become the legends of their cities. And so the mobile component of the Cities of the World campaign actually allowed people to download the app and become involved or become more informed about things that they could do in their market. And one of the things that they found really worked about the app was the component of it tapped into so aggressively into the fear of missing out. You know, men did not want their friends to find out about a place to go or something to do before they did. And so this really was a great way to help them explore their cities. And again, I love that this was part of a broader campaign. One of the things that we find we often lose sight of is the fact that we are interacting with people on all levels. We're not just interacting with them on mobile. And so what we need to do is we need to leverage platforms, creative ideas that are then optimally deployed by vehicle. Brand messaging has evolved on mobile, in particular in terms of micro videos. And when I talk about micro videos, I'm basically talking about videos that are 8 seconds in length or shorter. Now, when these videos started, I think we all looked at them and said, oh, what are these? What am I going to be able to achieve within this very short period of time? I've obviously got to keep it very singular focused, very simple. But what we have found is that marketers have done a brilliant job of starting to adapt micro videos to tell a broader brand story by starting to stitch them together to tell an overall brand narrative. 2 examples of that is first Gap. Gap had a 12 installment mini-series of these micro videos called Spring is Weird. And it was basically about the developing relationship with a couple. And their product was featured quite prominently. Their spring collection was featured quite prominently throughout that series. And so you can see that rather than focusing on the single, say, 6-second video to tell their story, what they did was they took their overall story and connected it together. Part of the beauty of this is that it allows you to be relevant in the moment. So think about how we deploy advertising and how we buy advertising. We always want to be in the moment. We always want some element of recency. But when you're telling these connected narratives across these micro videos, they are getting people with a certain recency on a daily, monthly, weekly effect, whatever the desire may be. Another interesting one is Lowe's. Lowe's actually put together a series of how-to videos that when you put them together actually take you through a project from end to end. And the videos allow you instructions, step-by-step instructions on how to do something. So the example you see here is actually how do you build your own fire pit. So basically they took the building of a fire pit and broke it down into small increments that when put together allowed you to do it on your own. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but one of the key things that we found with the successful campaigns is that, first of all, they were much more likely to include an element of social, but they were 3 times more likely to use 4 channels as part of the campaign, 4 or more channels as part of the campaign overall. So in other words, these weren't tactics, these weren't standalone elements in the most successful of cases. The cases that performed the best tended to be part of a multimedia plan. I think we can all agree that L'Oreal is probably one of the most innovative organizations in the mobile space. And they created Makeup Genius, which basically allows you to take a picture of yourself and try on different makeup through that picture. But what people don't realize is that this was part of a broader campaign that was supported with print and TV. And it was all about driving traffic, getting people to be more aware of this application, because this was a great way to sell makeup and get women to feel more comfortable with trying out different options. So to wrap up the 6 key areas, the first is be useful, provide utility, but really understand where you have permission to go in terms of that utility. What need or want are you uniquely addressing as a brand? Okay. Second, interact with consumers, embrace that two-way conversation, and importantly, listen. You know, we talk about listening overall in this industry, but very often this provides us with a unique ability to have that two-way dialogue. But to truly engage in a two-way basis, you have to listen. Be social. We find that the most successful campaign or mobile apps that we looked at actually feature an element of social within their campaign. I think you just saw in one of the earlier presentations how prominent social is within the mobile space. So it is natural to be able to get those elements to weave together seamlessly. The fourth is satisfy and reward. I actually like to think about this as creating an experience. Creating an experience of which I am part. So this isn't about collecting points or some sort of rewards in a very literal sense. It's rewarding people by making them part of your brand experience. Embrace emerging mediums. We looked at examples of micro videos. What's interesting with micro videos, I think we can all agree, is when we first saw them, we thought, oh God, what are we going to be able to do with this? The only thing we're going to be able to do is have something that's very single-minded, very focused. But the fact of the matter is, you can see as marketers started to embrace those micro videos, they were really able to explore how they could tell their brand narrative in new and interesting ways. So we need to think about how we embrace these new mediums, that we don't get scared off by the fact that they are so different from what we've seen before. And then finally, unlock the multi-channel potential. Make sure that mobile is intertwined with your other media channels and that it is part of a broader idea. All too often, we see that mobile is managed basically separately. And what happens is you do end up with some incredible creativity. But on the flip side, sometimes you end up confusing people by not creating an experience that is single-minded and clear to them. So what's key here is to make absolute best use of the channel, because mobile does things that you cannot get elsewhere, but use it and think about it as part of the broader platform. So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about marketing excellence in the mobile world.
I have a question.